Hi friends, in today's session of Microsoft Excel, we will study how to create a fully automated data entry form in Microsoft Excel. So without any further ado, let's dive straight into the subject. So this is our data entry sheet. So if you see, we are having two sheets with us. The first sheet is titled Entry Form. In this sheet, we'll be entering all the data in the respective column heads. And once we click on the Submit button, the data should get transferred into the second sheet, which is titled as Database. And that is as follows. So already there are some 4 records in the database sheet. We will come into the entry form and we will enter a fresh record. So I'll type some data over here. You will see the moment you type a data over here, the color of that column gets removed and you see a tick mark over here. If I delete the text in this particular column, you will see that it becomes back to gray color. So let us enter some data. So I enter the student's name, I enter the father's name, I select the sex, I select the city, I select the state, I type the PIN code, I type the contact number, I type the registration number, I type the admission date, and finally I type the course name. After this, you will see the moment I finish typing my last data, the Submit button will become highlighted. And the moment I click on the Submit button over here, you will see the data gets moved from this sheet into the database sheet. So let us now go into the database sheet and you will see that data has got appended here at the bottom. Now let us come back to the entry form and let us enter one more data. So I enter one more data over here. And I enter the registration number, I enter the admission date, and I enter the course name, and now I click on the Submit button. Notice that if I don't enter data in one of the cells over here, the Submit button will get grayed out. Only when there is data in all the cells and also the terms and condition is highlighted. Supposing I uncheck this, then also the Submit button will get grayed out. So I'll put a check mark here and I would click on Submit. So the data has moved from this sheet into the database sheet. Let us now go into the database sheet and you will see that the data has got appended at the bottom of the sheet. Again we come into the entry form. Over here you see that there is one more button called as Clear. Now let us see how this button works. Now supposing I enter some data over here, and after entering the data, I realize that there was some mistake in the data. And if I want to clear that data, I would click on the clear button. So that will clear the data without adding it into the database. So this is how our automated sheet should work. So without any further ado, now let's see how to create this automated sheet. Now this is a brand new file of Excel. What I have done is I have just typed the respective column headings. Let us now begin. First, I would increase the width of column B, and for doing this I would bring my cursor in the junction of the two columns and double click over here like this. This increases the width of this column. In the same way, I would click on the junction of G and H and increase the width of this column as well. Now I would select the headings, the rows, by clicking on the row number like this, and keeping the control key pressed, I would select all the rows this way. And now I want to increase the row height. So I would click on any of the row and increase the height of one of the row, and that would automatically increase the height of all the highlighted cells. After that, I would like to reduce the width of column C. So I would click here and I would reduce the width of column C. And in the same way, I would like to reduce the width of column H as well. Now the blank rows in between the cells, I want to reduce their height. So I click on the blank row, and then keeping the control key pressed, I select the other blank rows and then I reduce the height of one of the rows, and that would reduce the height of all the selected cells. Now I click on these headings, and by keeping the control key pressed, I select all these headings. Then I select middle align to middle align these headings. After that, I click on the column C and I enter colon. Again, I select the colon, select middle align, select center, and I make it bold. Then I copy this by pressing Ctrl C, and then I select the other cells by keeping the Ctrl key pressed, and then I press Ctrl V to paste the colon in all the other remaining cells. Now I want to increase the width of column D and column I. So what I will do is I would select the column D, and keeping the Ctrl key pressed, I would select column I. Now I want the width of these two columns to become 42. So for that, after selecting the two columns, I click on Home, I select Format, and I select column width, and I type the column width as 42, and then I click on OK. Now I want to reduce the width of column E, so I will first click outside to remove the selection, and then I would reduce the width of column E, and in the same way I would like to reduce the width of column F as well. Now we will select these cells by keeping the control key pressed like this and make these cells bold by clicking on B. Now we will select these cells and we would exclude selecting gender and address. Other than that, we would select all the other cells by keeping the control key pressed. And now I would select borders for this. So I would click over here and I would select thick border, thick outside borders. So all these cells would get thick outside borders. I would select center align and I would also select middle align for these cells. Next we will be formatting these cells. So what I want that if these cells do not contain any data, then it should be filled with a light gray color, and if it contains data, then the fill color should go over. In order to do so, we have to first ensure that all the cells are selected. In our case, the cells are already selected. Then click on the Home menu and click on Conditional Formatting and there select New Rules. In New Rules, we will select Format only cells that contain. And in this that contains, we will select blanks. So it means that format only those cells that contain blanks. So what do we want when the cells are blank? We would click on Format and then we would select Fill, and in Fill we would select this lightest gray color and we would click on OK and again click on OK. Let us see the effect. We will click outside. You can see that the cells are filled with a light gray color. Now I would click on one of the cells and the moment I enter the data and hit enter, you will see that the color disappears and it becomes colorless. The fill color of the cell becomes colorless. And the moment I select the data and I delete it, it becomes light gray again. So this was the first effect which we applied. I also want that all the cells should be in bold. So I one more time select all these cells keeping the control key pressed and then I press B. Then I click outside. So whatever data I type now, for example, it would come in bold. And the moment I press enter, the fill would go away. And the moment I delete the contents, it would be filled with light gray again. Now what I want is the moment the user enters some data in this column, a tick mark should come over here. And if there is nothing entered over here, then it should show an asterisk symbol or a star. So let us see how to achieve that. For that, I'll first click on this cell and I would use the function if. So in order to use a function, I begin with equal to, then I type if, then I type open parenthesis and I click over here. So if this cell is equal to blank, means there is nothing in that cell, then it should substitute over there star. So I give that star in quotation mark, and if it is containing anything other than a blank, then it should substitute the number 1. After that, I close parenthesis and I hit enter. So you can see star has come over there. I would select that star and I would change the color of the font to a bright red. I would make it bold and I would make it slightly bigger in size. Now if I enter some data over here and I hit enter, you will see 1 is coming over here, and the moment I press delete, it is being replaced by star. Now what I want, that instead of 1 coming over there when I am entering the data, a tick mark should come. So let us see how to achieve that. So first I would copy this formatting, so I'll press Ctrl C and then I would keep the Ctrl key pressed and highlight these cells, and I would press Ctrl V to paste the data over here. I'll also reduce the width of column J a bit like this. Now in order to get that tick mark, I select these cells again by keeping the Ctrl key pressed like this, and then in the home I select conditional formatting, and in conditional formatting I select new rule. In new rule I select format all cells based on their values. Okay, so remember earlier we had selected format only cells that contain value, but this time we are selecting format all cells based on their values. Now in this drop down over here I will select icon sets. Now in the icon sets over here you have the different icon formats, so I select the first one, and in this very first over here I select the tick mark. Over here I select no cell icon. Over here I select no cell icon, and I specify when the value is greater than 1, it should substitute a tick mark, and over here I don't want any value over here, so I just delete the existing value over there. Now I click on OK. So if it doesn't accept, just enter 0 and click on OK. Now let us enter some data and hit enter. So you will see a tick mark is coming over here. Now along with the tick mark, if you have noticed, the number 1 is also coming. So if I don't want that number 1 should come along with the tick mark, then what I will do is I would again select these cells by keeping the Ctrl key pressed, again click on home, again click on conditional formatting, and in conditional formatting I would select manage rules. So this is my existing rule, so this is the icon set. I would double click over there, and here you have show icon only. So I would select show icon only. Then I would click on OK, and now if I type a value over here, it would just show me a tick mark like this. And when I delete it, that will go away. Now I would also just select these cells and slightly increase the size of the tick mark. Ensure that it is middle aligned and also center aligned. Now I would click outside and I would just delete this data. So our sheet is done with this part of formatting. Next, we will create an option button for the gender column over here. In order to enter the option button, you require a developer tab. As you can see in the menu on the top, we do not have the developer tab. In order to invoke the developer tab, you have to click on the file menu, and from file click on more. In more select options. In options select customize ribbon, and in customize ribbon put a check mark next to the developer tab and then click on OK. Now you will see the developer tab in the menu. Once you see the developer tab, click on the developer tab and then click on the insert menu, and in the insert menu over here you have the option button. So I click on the option button and I draw one option button like this. One more time, I want the same option button to be duplicated. So I would select the option button and press Ctrl D to duplicate that button. And I would bring the button close over here. I can realign the buttons this way. And now I want to change the text, so I'll click inside and I'll delete the existing text and alternately type male, and over here I will type female. Now the two checkboxes, the two option buttons are ready. Now we will come over here and we'll select this column F, G and H, and we will click on the home and select merge and center. Then I would type over here terms and conditions and I would hit enter. I would select the terms and conditions, I would right justify it, I would middle align it, and I would also make it bold. Now over here I want a checkbox to come. So for the checkbox, I once again take help of the developer tab, and in the insert menu over here you have the checkbox. So I click on the checkbox and I draw one checkbox over here. I will slightly expand the checkbox and then move it to the location where I want, and you'll see that there is some existing text. I will just delete the existing text and I would adjust the checkbox to the location I prefer, that is using the up and down arrow keys. I can move the checkbox up and down like this. Finally, I would select these columns over here and I would select home and I would select merge and center. Now over here I would write down the terms and conditions. So I would write down fees once paid would not be refunded, and then on the next line I want to add admission fees would not be included in the final fees, and I would hit enter. Then I would select this and I would middle align it. Now I want to activate the gender, that is the male and the female. So you select any of the option button and right click on that button like this, and from there you select format control. In format control you have an option called as cell link. So you click over there and then we would click over here to specify this as the cell link, and then I would click on OK. So you can see that it is showing me 1, and when I click on female you can see it is showing me as 2. Same way I would select on this check mark and I would select format control, and again I would select cell link and I would click over here and I would select OK. So you can see that it is showing me as true. When I uncheck this check mark it will become false. Now over here I would use one function to count how many data has been entered. So we have cells 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. So that's just for your information. So I use a function called as count A, and then I click over here, I give comma, click over here, I give comma, and I continue the process until I finish selecting all the cells, and then I would close parenthesis and hit enter. Right now it is showing me 0, but the moment I enter some data over here, okay, in all these columns you can see the value is getting updated. The registration number, the admission date, and finally the course name. So you can see the value of the count A is coming as 9. So when this is 9 and when the terms and condition is true, that means that the form has been entered. Okay. If the terms and condition is not checked, then it would show as false. And in the same way, if any of this data is not selected, the count A would not be 9. This is just for your information. Now we go ahead and we'll create two buttons, one for submit and one for clear. Now before we create the two buttons, we will click on this cell and we'll use one function called as the AND. So I will type equal to and I'll open parenthesis, and I would type over here, I would select this field over here. This is the field, that is L13, is the one which is representing this checkbox. So I would write over there, if that field is equal to true, comma, and the count A field L9, that is the field representing the total number of values filled, is equal to 9, and then I would close parenthesis and hit enter. So right now it is showing false because neither this is checked nor there is some value in this. But the moment you enter some value in these cells, as I am entering right now, and the moment you put a check mark, you will see it turns into true. After we have done this, next we would proceed to construct the two buttons, submit and clear. So we will now move to somewhere at the bottom of the sheet, and somewhere over here we will create a button. So I would increase the height of this row like this, and I would format this and change the color of this. So I would change the fill color to something like light gray, and I would type a text inside this like submit, and I would center align it, and I would also middle align it. I would also make it bold, and I would change the text color to white. Now, after you have created this button, you want to associate a formula with this button. So in order to associate a formula with this button, we would click on Conditional Formatting, and in Conditional Formatting we would select New Rules, and here you have Use a formula to determine which cells to format. After that I would click over here, and then I would go on the top and I would say that if this cell is equal to true. This is the cell, the last cell in which we have said that all the values should be 9 and the terms and conditions should be checked. So if that cell is true, then it should change the color of the button to fill color to dark green, and the font color it should change it to bright white. Okay, and it should also make the font bold, and then we would click on OK, and then we would click on OK. So you can see the button is now become green, but the moment one of these values is deleted or there is no check mark over here, the button gets grayed out again. The moment you satisfy all the conditions, the button becomes green again. Now next what we would do, we would press Ctrl C to copy that button, and then in this paste option over here, you have an option that is paste a linked picture. So you will see one linked picture gets pasted over here, and that linked picture we can move it on the top to the location where you want the submit button should come. So I want that the submit button should come over here, and you will see that this linked picture, this picture is linked. So if I remove this check mark, it gets ghosted, and if I put the check mark, it is working again. Same way, next to this I want to create another button called as clear. So I would come down, and somewhere over here I would create another button. So I'll increase the height, and I want that the height of this button should be equal to the height of this button. So I'll select this row, and in the format cells I would like to see what is the height of this row over here. So I can just select for row height, and you can see the row height is 32.25. So same way I would select this, right click, formats, row height 32.25. So the row height of both these cells is 32.25. Now over here I want to fill this color with dark green, and I want to type the text as clear, and the text I want should be center and middle aligned, and the font color I want to be white, and I want it to be bold. And again I want to create a linked picture, so I'll press Ctrl C for copy, and next to this paste I would select paste a linked picture, and then I would move this linked picture. I think it didn't get pasted. Let's do again. Control C, copy, and we click on paste and select link picture, and now we move this link picture on the top. Over here. So we would just realign the two buttons. I would select them, and in this align I would select align middle, and I would bring them slightly down and click outside. I would reduce this row height so that the buttons come on the top. Next we will study how to create the macro so that when we click on submit, all this data should be moved into the next sheet. Now I have copied all these headings from our first sheet and created another sheet called as database, and I have pasted that heading over here, and I have also pasted some sample dummy data below it. Now I am selecting this entire first row like this, and I am pressing Ctrl C to copy it, and then coming back to our original entry sheet and coming back to somewhere at a remote location over here, and I am pressing Ctrl V to paste the headings over here. Now I want to link these headings with these cells. So I click on the very first heading, which is the student's name. So I will click on equal to, and then I would just click on this cell D3, hit enter. So whatever is the value in D3 will come here. Same way for registration, I click on equal to and click on registration number. Same way over here you have the father's name, so I click on equal to and I select father's name. Finally over here you have the admission date, so I click on equal to and I select admission date. Now for gender, what we'll do, we'll use a function called as equal to if. So I type equal to if, open parenthesis, and then I select this value. So if this value is equal to 1, then it should substitute over there male, else it should substitute over there female. Close parenthesis and hit enter. So you can see it is male and 1. So when I press enter, it should show me as male. If I change this to female, it will become 2, and here you will see female. Same way I will link the other cells. I'll do it at a bit faster rate. So now I have finished entering all the data. We'll just enter some valid data just to see whether everything is going properly. So I'll quickly enter some valid data over here. I would also ensure that the terms and condition is selected. I will just go down and see whether all the data has come over here. So the name has come, the student's name has come, the registration number has come, the father's name has come, admission date, the gender, the course name, the city, the state, the pin code, and the contact number. Now, after ensuring everything is coming correct, do not adjust the column width, because if you adjust these column widths, you would alter these column widths, which we don't want. Now, I want that if I click on submit, then it should copy all this data into the database sheet at the bottom. So let us see how to do that. In order to do that, we have to write a macro. So for writing a macro, you have to click on developer, and in developer you have an option called as record macro. So I click on record macro. It will give me a default name as macro1. You can change this to any name of your choice. Right now I'll keep it to the same macro1, and I would click on OK. Now it is in the record mode. So whatever steps I do now, it will record it. So what I am doing, I am selecting this entire data by keeping the shift key press, and I am pressing Ctrl C to copy the data. After that, I am clicking on the database sheet, and I am clicking on a blank location in this sheet. Then I am pressing Ctrl and down arrow. This brings me to the last row in the sheet. Then I am pressing Ctrl and left arrow. This brings me to the first column of the sheet. Then I press Ctrl and up arrow. This brings me to the last line containing the data. Then I click on Use Relative References. Then I press down arrow once, and then I select Ctrl, Alt and V. Now over here you have an option called as Values. So I will select Values, and I would click on OK. Then I would press the right arrow key from the keyboard and come to a blank location in my sheet. Then I would turn off the relative referencing. And finally, I would stop recording the macro. But before stopping to record the macro, we would also like to clear the values in the original sheet. So we will go back to the entry form sheet and come to the beginning, and we will also clear these values by pressing the delete key. And now I want to stop recording the macro, so I would click on Stop Recording the Macro. So it has finished recording the macro. Now let us see whether the macro is working or not. So I'll quickly enter some fresh data over here. And now I want to run the macro. In order to run the macro, I have to click on this macro button over here, and here you can see the macro 1. So it will transfer all this data after I select run into the database sheet, and it will also clean this data. Let us see whether it is doing that. So I click on run. So it has transferred the data into the database sheet, and it has also cleared the data. Let us click on database and see whether the data has got transferred. So we click on database, and you can see that the data has got transferred over here. Let us add one more data and see whether that is coming below it or is it overwriting this. So one more time I click on Amit, and one more time I enter some data over here, and I select the state, and I select some contact number, some registration number, some admission date, and some course name. And I click on submit, or I'll run the macro because we are still not assigned to submit. So I one more time come into developer, I select on macro, select my macro, and select run. Let us go in the database, and you can see it's come below that data and it's not overwritten our data. So our macro is running fine. Now the only thing we have to do is assign that macro to this particular button. So let us see how to do that. In order to assign the macro to the submit button, you click on the submit button like this, and then right click over here on the submit button and select assign macro. Over here we will select macro 1 and click on OK. Now the moment you enter some data like this, you'll enter some dummy data and ensure that terms and condition is selected. The submit button gets highlighted, and the moment I click on submit, it gets transferred into the database sheet here. Again I come into the entry form, and in the same way I want to assign a macro to for the clear. So for that also we have to write a macro. So we will first enter some dummy data like this, and then we'll begin the recording the macro. So we click on developer, we select record macro. Let the macro name be macro 2, and we will select OK. Now it's in the record mode. I will just select all the cells and I would delete the data. Once I have finished deleting the data, I would click on stop recording. In order to assign that macro to clear button, I would right click on the clear button and I would assign macro and assign macro 2. Then click on OK. Let us check by entering some dummy data over here, and now if I just click on clear, you will see that the data gets clear. Finally, these cells are there. I would just click on home and change the font color to white so that they are not visible. Now let us for the last time check our macro. So we enter some data and we enter some city name, state name, pin code, contact, registration, admission date, course name, terms and conditions, and click on submit. Let's go into database and you can see that the new data has got added. And let's go into the entry form and enter some more dummy data. And let's click on clear. So both the macros are now functional. Finally, one last thing we'll do is, this cell is there. For visual appearance, we'll just change this color to a bright blue color like this. Maybe slightly reduce the row height. And our completely automated Excel data entry form is ready. Hope you have learned something in this particular lecture. With this, we end this lecture and we'll see you again in the next lecture. Till that time, goodbye.